Welcome to Q&A practice. Let's start with defense attorney. Ready? Here we go. So you weren't paying attention to what was going on with the car at that point. You were giving statements, oral and written, right? We were facing the vehicle while you were sitting there writing a statement, or did you not write it? Objection, argumentative judge. She said she watched the vehicles the whole time. I don't know how many times she has to say that. Well, he's allowed to ask a question about writing and watching the vehicle at the same time. I will allow the question. Did you handwrite the statement yourself? Yes, thank you. No further questions. Attorney Katz, not for today, Judge. That's fine. Okay, you are excused. Well, before I say that, when you say not for today, are you intending to ask questions on redirect tomorrow? No, I'm sorry. Very well, you are excused for today. Members of the jury, that concludes the portion of the trial for you today. I will remind you again not to talk to each other about this matter. Also, make sure that you do not listen to any news accounts. Don't read the newspaper. Don't listen to the local news on the radio. Don't watch the local news on TV. We will see you tomorrow morning. Now you may be seated, counsel. Before we leave today, did you wish to take up the issue of these stipulations on the record? We certainly can, Judge. Judge, before we do that, I do want to clear up a couple of things. And I want to make a specific renewed discovery request on 2 items, because until today I was not aware, have not actually received any reports from any Manitowoc or Calumet County sheriffs about this search that Ms. Sturm was involved in down by the Mishicot River area, where a cell phone was found. Photos apparently were taken. The phone was seized. There's no reports of that activity anywhere in any of the discovery we have received. Secondly, Mr. Drum testified about Exhibit 25, and perhaps it wasn't clear because he was asked maybe 2 different things on direct and cross, but I understood him to say that Exhibit 25 was a picture of a photo taken on November 4th, and as I looked at it more carefully, it's obvious that it was not. It was something taken long after the vehicle was discovered. There's all sorts of police vehicles around, command posts. The RAVE is not there. The RAVE 4 is not there, but he did testify that he did not recall whether video was being taken during the flight, but he did recall photo being taken, and we did not receive any photo from that flight. All we have received was a video, and so I would renew a discovery request for those photos as well. All right, and before I ask for a response from the state, I did want to note for the record that the sidebar that was requested during the testimony of Pamela Sturm related to that photo and the issue that Mr. Butig just raised, and as I understand it, both parties acknowledged that Exhibit 25 is an aerial photo of the Avery Salvage Yard property, but one that was taken sometime after at least the victim's vehicle was removed from the property. And how long after that, I'm not exactly sure, but is that correct, counsel? It is, Judge, and in fact, there are a couple of very important points to raise. First, the question that I asked of Mr. Drum was whether or not exhibit number 25 looked the same or similar as to what he observed on the 4th. I think that is not at all the same question as was this photo taken on the 4th. Perhaps as importantly, the court will note in the proposed stipulations and agreed upon stipulations by the parties that aerial photos are one area that before we even walked into court we had agreed would be admissible without objection, and this might be a good segue to put that on the record. Lastly, this cell phone down by the river is the first I have heard of this. Certainly never came through our office, never was provided by our office as part of discovery, because I don't have anything from that. Mr. Drum's testimony about a video being taken from his plane is accurate. That was already provided to defense. And I can also assure the court that I am unaware of any photos that were taken therefrom. So although the video has been provided from that flyover, from that aerial search, I don't understand there to be any still photos from there, although they did get the video. So what you are saying is that your understanding is, from what I take it, exactly the opposite of Mr. Drum's understanding. I think he said he thought there were photos taken, but was not aware of video, though he wasn't personally involved in either one. He was flying the plane. You are telling me that what actually happened was video was taken, but no photos. The video has been turned over. I'm sure the camera he saw was a video camera, and that has been turned over to the defense. I would ask if counsel is just discovering this cell phone incident today, and the way she described it, obviously there was some sort of police involvement, that perhaps overnight he should check with probably Manitowoc and see what's up with that. Perhaps Mr. Butig would like to do that. It's not in my possession, Judge. How did this come to light? How did you know how to ask the questions about it, Mr. Butig? I guess I'm at a loss. I don't know how it got started. We get tips too, just like they do, sometimes useless, sometimes not. This one sounded like it might be more legitimate, so I thought I would ask her about it, but I had no confirmation of it until today, and she clearly describes a police action of some sort. To say that it's not in his possession, Manitowoc officers are testifying for the state. They have been involved in critical parts of this case in terms of evidence that was discovered. So I think he does have an obligation under Brady potentially to get to the bottom of this and find out, is this something that was never even documented? Manitowoc never even wrote a report, or did they write a report and we just haven't received it? Wait a second, Judge. When throwing the word Brady around, it sounded through this witness that inquiry was made that very day. Was this Lynn's cell phone? The Hunter family assured them it wasn't her cell phone at all. I don't know what could ever be considered exculpatory, potentially exculpatory relating to relevant evidence. That notwithstanding, I just asked Investigator Weigert. He hasn't heard of this either. We can certainly check our reports, and we're happy to do that for Mr. Butig and more thoroughly check that and also make some inquiries, but it's quite certain, at least to me, that it isn't something in our possession, and even if it were, would have very little, if any, relevance to this particular case. Well, I don't know if it has any Brady implication or not, but it sounds like something that would be in at least the possession of the state, this case being state of Wisconsin versus Mr. Avery, not Calumet County. So I'm going to ask the state to determine whether there are any reports of the incident, and if there are any, share them with the defense. Will do that, Judge. Thank you. I did not understand Mr. Drum to be testifying that the aerial photo on the screen was one that he necessarily thought was taken the day he flew over the salvage yard property. It might, if it's going to come up as an issue in any way because of, for example, the line of police cars that are on the property, it might be helpful for the parties to notify the jury when the photo was taken. I don't think anything about that's come in yet, or if it has, I haven't caught it. I think we should, because we did zoom in on it a little bit, and I don't know if they saw, but I mean, I knew what I was looking at, and the RAV 4 was clearly not there. I don't want them back in deliberations, not knowing what's going on, looking at this. If they misunderstood that it was taken when Mr. Drum was flying on the 4th, before the vehicle was even discovered, it just may confuse things. As I watched the evidence myself, I wondered if anybody was going to zoom in and show where the RAV4 was because I was not aware of when the photo was taken. So I think the jury should be informed of that. Anything else before we get to the stipulations? Have I missed anything that's been placed in issue? No. If not, let's move on to the stipulations. Who is going to speak? I certainly can judge. Mr. Strang, I'm sure, will correct me if there's a problem. First of all, there is one stipulation that came up this afternoon. As Mr. Schmitz was leaving the witness stand, I had neglected to inquire of him what his telephone number was. I'm simply doing that because there's going to be a summary exhibit contemplated later that each of the witnesses, rather than calling a custodian of Mr. Schmitz's phone, may have been called rather than recall him. For that purpose, Mr. Strang was gracious enough to agree to a stipulation. His phone number, Judge, is 894-3912. I believe that's a 920 area code, and that should be included as a fact and provided to the jury. All right, that will conclude our Q&A practice.